Hello, everybody. This is Stu Smith with the Tactical Fitness Report. We have a special guest today, Phil Black, who is a former Navy SEAL, but that's not all. We tend to have a lot of former military guys on here. I have this program show that I call Two Through and After, where I ask people, like, who were you before you were a SEAL, and what did you do during, while you were a SEAL, and then what are you doing now? But this one is even beyond that, Phil. We're going to talk about what you are doing, what you've done. But the main reason why I'm so excited to have you on here today is because you kind of personify everything that as a coach, as a teacher, as a parent, that I try to instill in people to be able to do. Right. And people are saying, okay, what is this? What is this? So I'll let you introduce yourself, but I just want to say that, everything that I do we talk about preparation, right? And your new program that you have is called the Prepwell Academy. Goes right hand in hand with everything that we do. And I can't wait to hear about the Prepwell Academy and the process that you have for teenagers and, people that are, dreaming of certain things in their future.
Sure.
But anyway, this whole preparation thing, and, where we talk about, you have this motivation to do something, and then you got to get off your butt and go do it. Right. And that's the hard part. So, you have to create these habits through consistency, and then that builds discipline. And then you have, mental toughness that starts building in there, and you get this never quit attitude. But I tell you the truth, the hardest thing is the guts to start. 90% of success is just showing up,
Right. Yeah.
and you have done everything. Everybody, I want you to know what Phil Black has done. He is a former SEAL, right? But let's back it up to when you were a high school athlete, right? Played some sports, obviously pretty good, probably looked at by other colleges, played college ball. So he took a high school activity and made it a college sport. He played basketball. He played for Yale, right, which is an Ivy League school, which is another hurdle, that people try to get into all the time. You had some post-grad success with Harvard Business School, right? Another huge accomplishment. You went into the civilian workforce with Goldman Sachs, correct? Is that where you
Yes.
started off? You were working there. I mean, that is not easy to do.
Right.
That is that is a elite position to get into. I mean, it requires some smarts and some will to work that hard. And then you said, you know what, I'm going to be a naval officer and go to Buds, and you did that, right? So every one of these steps, you just had a dream, you achieved it, you got it, made it through OCS, made it through Buds. By the way, side note, one of the tallest SEALs ever. What are you, 6'7"?
6'7", yes.
6'7". That must have been awful in Boat Crew 1. I can't
was-
imagine what Boat Crew 1 was like for you.
It was great fun.
All right. And then, he gets out of the Navy after how many years? Were you
A little over 6 years.
Over 6 years. All right. So gets out of the Navy, becomes an entrepreneur. And this is where I first heard about him, because he created the Fit Deck. You guys might remember, the cards are still out there, the Fit Deck cards that you flip a card and you got an exercise, certain reps to do. That's when I knew right there Phil Black was a genius when he did that. He created that. Little did I know all the other stuff. I just saw the Fit Deck and I said, he's a genius. It's a great one. And then, you said, you know what, I'm going to try to get on Shark Tank. And he got on Shark Tank. But you're on to even bigger and better things now, right? And oh, by the way, he's a firefighter too, right? So what is it that what haven't you done, Phil?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things on the list still, but I've got a lot of balls in the air. I've got 4 kids and running this new business, and as a firefighter, there's a lot on the plate. But with having done a lot of that stuff, I have a lot of confidence also to get after a lot of different things.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's talk about, this. I guess let's talk about the journey of why you think, where you are right now with this Prepwell Academy. Explain to us what the Prepwell Academy is and why you think that, teenagers, parents need to understand this process of the journey that a teenager wants to go into their 20s, all right, and
Sure.
into their next phase of life.
Sure. It's an interesting story. I first started getting involved in this a couple years ago when I now have two 15-year-olds who are my oldest sons of the four sons that I have. And they were playing lacrosse, they were playing water polo, they were playing basketball, and they were a little bit younger then. They were in 6th and 7th grade. And I'm standing on the sidelines, and of course there's other parents around watching their kids and talking about this and talking about that. And I continually heard these horror stories from parents about, hey, such and such has a 4.4 and a 1450 on the SAT and got rejected from UCLA. What's happening? What this college admission stuff is crazy. And I heard stories and stories, and somehow I kept getting sucked into these conversations because I like these types of conversations, and the kids were a little bit older than my kids. And I was curious, like, wow, is there been a big sea change of what's going on? I better get into this. A couple of years, my kids are going to have to face this difficulty. And as I got closer, I got more involved in the conversations, and they're like, hey, Phil, you went to Harvard, you went to Yale. Like, you tell us, what does it take these days to get into not necessarily an Ivy League school, but any school, public school? Sure. UCLA is a public school. So that kind of got my attention. I was deer in the headlights, and I was like, wow, I don't really know. Am I prepared for my own kid's future? And it seems like it's starting earlier and earlier. Yeah. So I went back and I started researching, and I became the pseudo subject matter expert on the fields. And people would come up to me and say, what have you learned? What are you seeing out there? And I started tutoring and mentoring kids, which is really my passion, training and helping kids, whether it's in exercise with FitDeck or now mentoring with life skills and envisioning their future. And I started having small group gatherings at a local church, and that started to grow. And all of a sudden it became just another big event that parents had to go to. They had to go to Sunday night for 2 hours the first few months of the year. And I started thinking, wow, that we're really picking up this. There's something here that parents need, which is some guidance, some information about what's going on. And I happen to have a lot of time on my hands because I sold the FitDeck business a few years ago. And as a firefighter, I have a lot of time off. So I started assembling this big curriculum starting in 9th and 10th grade all the way through 12th grade. And parents were getting excited about it and saying, how do I get my child involved? I can't make it on Sunday nights. How else can I get my child involved? So P.S., that turned into what Prepwell Academy is now, which is an online platform whereby students, as early as once they graduate from 8th grade, they can enroll in Prepwell Academy and essentially get videos from me every week, small, short videos, digestible videos of a couple minutes each, giving them the milestones, the heads up, the make sure you're not missing this big deadline, this big event, and also other things like life skills and other things which, in my opinion, have even become more important than the blocking and tackling of deadlines and make sure you don't forget about this. So that's been a very interesting timeline and tracking. Now we're all across the country with people enrolling all over the country in different phases. And the bigger thing I think that I've learned over the last couple of years of running this is I didn't get into this to help kids, quote unquote, pretty up their resume to get into college. Because some kids, they're going to do perfectly well going to a trade school and becoming an electrician, becoming a plumber, taking a gap year, joining the military, enlisting. But then there's the opposite extreme in terms of how competitive things are, where it's maybe the Ivy League, or they want to get a college scholarship for sports, or they want to go to ROTC or a service academy. And what I found, Stu, was it's the same principles over and over and over again that kids need to know. I call them the 7 essential skills that they have to know. It just so happens that the college admissions process happens to be a great proxy for what they're going to learn or have to do later on.
Absolutely.
So for instance, learning how to do research, learning great interview skills, learning how to do project management, learning how to interview with somebody. These skills, how to take a standardized test. I mean, between you and I've probably taken 30, whether it's a certification or a firefighter exam or a Series 7 test from Wall Street. May as well learn how to study for the SAT or the ACT now. Absolutely. Because guess what? You're going to repeat that over and over and over again. Yeah. So part of Prepwell Academy is inserting these lifelong skills over time. It just so happens that it's going to help you do the best that you can do on your college application, but it has a long tail on it because all those things are going to come back and pay dividends when you try to get your first job, when you go to a school you don't quite like and you have to transfer, how to deal with adults, how to communicate well. So that's really the exciting part for me, is that it's not only about how do I get into Princeton? How do I get into West Point? That's nice for the people who really aspire to go to those elite schools, but it's for everybody who wants to figure out what the steps are to basically be successful in all facets of life.
I love it. I love it. In fact, let's kind of tailor it a little bit to the folks that listen to this tactical fitness report. Most people who listen to this are young. We get some older guys too that are also in the business of being a tactical professional. Maybe they have kids that are coming up as well. So, like I said, this isn't just for kids. This is for parents with kids that are worried about their journey and their future. But let's do this. One of the things that I always talk about is, and you will probably understand why I do this, is, when I talk about an 18-year-old kid who's asking all these questions about, enlisting and going to Buds and wants to be at Buds at 18, I tell them, statistically speaking, it's not a good choice. Give yourself some more time to prepare. Maybe take a couple years in college. We have a couple kids here locally that decided they'd listen to me.
Right.
And they went to the community college, took an EMT course, took a scuba course. They're getting college credits for things that they want to learn, right? And they're doing great, and they're spreading out, and they're getting some more time, and they're training with us and getting ready. So let's do this. Let's kind of frame this around. You mentioned it earlier: service academies, ROTC, college, regular college to OCS, because there's so many avenues to get into. I don't want to just limit it to Buds, obviously, but the military in itself, there's so many different avenues to do. Whether you go to college and you enlist, you go to college through an ROTC program, you go to college and go to OCS, you go to a service academy. Let's discuss those options and how challenging those are today. So maybe start off with what you did, your method.
Yeah, I think the punchline here, and you brought it up, is with kids these days, is patience.
Yes.
And I will say, I was not patient. I can't imagine the kids these days with the internet and phones and all the exposure to people who are getting rich quick schemes and all these other things. It seems like life is going so quickly. So back in the day when I was getting recruited as a basketball player, I had the Naval Academy coach come to my house and sit across the table from me. And Stu, I could not imagine it. He was telling me, oh, there's going to be a service commitment of 5 years once you graduate. And I thought to myself, 5 years, like I'm going to be slaying dragons. I'm going to be a CEO of a company. Like I had no perspective on time and maturity. I just felt like I wanted to get out of college and start doing stuff.
Right.
So you and I have the benefit of some perspective and a longer term view of what happens in life, especially these days where people are living, by the time these 18-year-olds, they're going to be living to 100. So I guess the bottom line is there's a lot of time.
Yeah. And think about the window too. Especially, if you're trying to join the military, you can join at 17, 18 years old, but you can also join at 28, 29, 30 years old.
Sure.
Just depending on what branch of service that is. So there's a big window there. So don't be in a rush. Absolutely.
Yeah, don't be in a rush. And the other thing is, the other big elephant in the room is the cost of education.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're talking, I like to put a number, and you've been to the Naval Academy, and it's a little bit different now than 20, 25 years ago, but I put a number when I talk to kids and parents of $500,000 is what I put on and that's a low ball number. That's very conservative for the value of an ROTC or a service academy experience. If you're comparing it to a like experience, i.e. a very competitive or selective college, doesn't necessarily have to be Ivy League, but something along those lines, private school, they're going to be $75,000, soon to be $100,000 a year. Yep. So if you take that $75,000 as a low ball and you multiply that by 4 years, and then you consider the fact that as in the service academies and an ROTC, you get paid a stipend. And then, oh, by the way, some people consider it as a payback period, or you have a service commitment. I call it a guaranteed job, Stu.
Absolutely. That's what I did. I couldn't believe I was getting paid for going to Buds.
Exactly.
It was awesome.
If you include, and then if you play your cards right and you make some financially some good moves, you're getting you have a guaranteed job for 5 years at a pretty good wage. And if you play your cards right, that could turn into a $100,000, $125,000 pot at the end of it. If you decide that it's not a career for you, some people do, some people don't, but you could potentially come out 5 years later. If, let's say, you decide that you don't think it's going to be your long-term thing, instead of having $200,000 in debt, you have a $125,000 war chest to start a business, buy a franchise, travel the world, start investing, and be an angel investor. I mean, you could do literally anything you wanted at age 25.
Yeah.
So, you never try to fast talk anybody into anything, but this idea of patience and that sprinting through a 4-year education so you can graduate with a communications degree and no prospects, that when you compare those two, it's becoming more and more of a compelling case. So I guess the first question was, how competitive is it, and what do kids these days have to do? Well, it's very competitive because when the cost of college is going up so much, light bulbs are going off, and even parents are saying, "Whoa, wait a second, you could go to this type of college and get the world-class education, the leadership training, the prestige, the world travel, obviously you're getting paid the whole time, you're getting an unbelievable alumni network, you're getting all that, and I don't have to worry about you getting a job, and it's free." Like that gets my attention.
Yeah.
So,
and you can play sports.
And of
you
course,
play college sports. Yeah, you can do both. That was my drive. I mean, I knew I wanted to serve, and I wanted to play sports. And I was like, wait a second, I can go to college for free, and I can be a pilot or whatever,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even if you're maybe not good enough to play at that level, it's still, sports is still mandatory in terms of PE, where everybody's getting out. That's why part of the big pillars is some athleticism.
Yes.
Because everybody's got to be able to mix it up. And you and I both know that even if you're somebody who flies drones in the Air Force, some level of physical fitness and endurance is a requirement in the military. So
sure.
You're around like people who like to get after it physically. There's obviously different degrees. Not everybody wants to be a SEAL or a pararescue person, but there's some nice baseline of people that makes it a pretty fun environment.
Oh man, that is awesome. So how about, why would a student consider looking into, these programs, whenever we're talking about the options to enlist right out of high school,
right? The
option to go to college, pay for your college, maybe play a sport if you're lucky, enlist after that. And then, they do one of the other ones where they have to be an officer because with the SEAL community, you have the juggling act. If you're smart enough to go to college, do you go the officer route or do you go the enlisted route?
Sure.
That's a tough thing to juggle for many people, especially when they hear about, SEALs aren't SEAL officers aren't as operational as the SEAL enlisted. And Jeff Nichols and I did a whole podcast on this one. So you guys that are listening can check that out. The SEAL and officer enlisted, discussion on the jobs, but that is a challenge for many people, that are in this journey, trying to decide what route to go to get to whatever military job they're trying to do.
Sure.
Yeah. So why would they consider like I said, I guess you kind of answered that with the amount of money and that it's free and everything like that. I guess that would be a good consideration, but at the same time, ROTC service academies aren't for everybody, at 18 years old. But here's the cool thing about it. If you decide to go to regular college, do that a couple of years, and then you decide, what, I think I'm a little more mature now. I played a couple of years of college sports at a D2 level. Maybe I'm going to apply back to the service academy. You can still do that up until age of 22. So you don't have to have the answers at 18. Once again, comes back to patience.
I think I've heard 30% of the incoming freshman class at Naval Academy is people who are post high school. So there's a pretty robust pipeline for people who need a post-grad year. They need to figure it out. And the other thing maybe people don't know, Stu, is if you're considering ROTC, and maybe we should, do people know what ROTC is? ROTC in my mind, this is not to downplay it because I think it's a fantastic idea, but it's basically like part-time military. while
Yes.
you're in college, as opposed to the service academies, which is more of a full-time feel where you're wearing uniforms all the time, and it's, it's more, a little bit more disciplined, and there's a lot of the yes ma'ams, no ma'ams, and the yes sirs, no sirs. Whereas ROTC, the beauty of that is if you're not quite sure you want the full experience of a service academy, you can opt, if you get the scholarship, to go ROTC and go to a traditional college, whether it's Boston College, Tulane, Princeton. There's 130 some odd colleges to do ROTC, and basically taste what it's like to be in an ROTC unit and have a normal experience. I talk to kids who are like, hey, I want to be able to wake up at Tuesday at 11 a.m. and throw the Frisbee on the quad, in my shorts and t-shirt. That's probably not going to happen at the Air Force Academy, but it could happen at Boston College. So if you're really, some people like the idea of the service academy environment and the culture and the bonding and the camaraderie. Other people not quite sure, but they still think they want to give it a shot. They can test drive it with ROTC. And much like the Naval Academy, as you know, you can quote unquote test drive it for 2 years. And by the time you start your junior year, that's when you actually sign on the dotted line that you're going to continue and commit. But you can always, I don't think many people do this because they figure, hey, if I'm 2 years deep in the Naval Academy, why would I stop now? Like the worst is over and I'm on the downward slope. So I'm not sure how many people actually opt out, but some people do opt out. They go there the first year. It's not for them. You don't have to pay the money back. You just transfer and try something else. Same thing with ROTC. You can get the scholarship, apply. You can get the scholarship, go to the school, test it out for a year in the ROTC unit. And if it's not for you, they pay for that first year. And then, of course, if you stay at the school, you have to pay for the remaining 3 years.
Right.
But so if somebody's hemming and hawing and they feel like they're not quite ready yet, they should understand that they're not signing their lives away.
That's a good
on
point.
day one. They can go check it out, see what the group is like, see if they like the environment and what it's all about, learn a little bit more, instead of just outright saying, I think I might do it, but I'm not sure, I'm completely out.
That's a really good point. In fact, a couple of years ago, we had a guy at the Naval Academy do 2 years because they have a 2 for 7 night, they call it, right? So after you do 2 years, you basically sign on the dotted line. If you show up on day one of year 3, you owe 7 years, which is 2 more years of college, 5 more years or you can leave at the day before, and just not owe the Navy anything, which is a pretty good deal, right? You get 2 years of college. And we had a guy that decided to do that, and he has made it through BUDS and is well on his way, being an enlisted SEAL.
Wow.
So, 2 years before his classmates. So there are options like that as well. So when you have a kid that shows up, or maybe on the parent side too, any of you young ones that are listening to this, have your parents listen to this if you're interested in learning more about the Prepwell Academy. But what do you have a student do? Say when is the ideal time to be part of Prepwell Academy, and can you still get a lot out of it if you're a year or 2 late?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the ideal time, my big push, and what I've learned over the last 4 years doing this, is early preparation wins the day.
Yes.
That's how we kick this program off, preparation. I personally am not the smartest guy in the room. I don't come from money. I don't have any special talents. I'm not overly intelligent. I didn't get a 1600 on the SAT. I'm like your average Joe, other than being a little bit taller than the average Joe. And the only reason that I've been able to do the things that you said in the beginning is because I get way out ahead, and which is very liberating for me. And I try to tell other kids, like, hey, I'm nothing special. I don't come from any lineage I didn't have anybody who knew a governor and got me in, or any of this stuff. I don't have legacy parents who went to these Ivy League schools, but I got way out ahead of it. I started researching, figuring stuff out, and slowly building my way up to make entry in these very competitive programs, which is part of the reason, as I was reflecting after I sold my last business, I was like, what is my superpower? What do I do? Do I do anything that's really that great? I'm not a great athlete. I can't jump. I'm not a great sprinter. I get injured often. Like, I'm a mess, but is there anything that I actually do? And I step back. I'm like, well, for some reason, I know how to prepare myself, even as lofty as some of those goals are, to get into there, because I start early and I do all the things that I teach in Prepwell Academy. Nice. So that's why we start. And that's why, you know, a lot of college admissions counselors, most of them start in the middle of 11th grade when students take the SAT. Then all of a sudden, wow, I got a such and such on the SAT. That's going to put me in a certain tier of what colleges to look at. And that's when the process starts. Unfortunately, that doesn't always end well, because there's a lot of preliminary stuff that you could have done to position yourself better. And I really dislike when I see regret on parents' faces and kids' faces, and they start surging in 11th grade, but they put their head in the sand in 9th and 10th grade. So I've pushed all of my attention to, once you graduate 8th grade, all the way through, the school goes all the way through, the online academy goes all the way through 12th grade, but I really stress starting in 9th grade. In fact, I don't even allow people to start in 11th grade. Now, it may sound a little bit harsh to say that it's too late.
Right.
But a lot of the kids that are attracted to my program, they have high aspirations. They want to get the full, the full Monty. They want to see it from front to back. So they start in 9th grade, and they start figuring out what needs to happen, so that by the time they get into 11th grade, Stu, I tell them, by the time they get into 11th grade, you should not really be thinking about college admissions. There's too many other things going on.
Yeah.
You have to worry about leadership positions. If you play a sport, maybe you're getting recruited. If you're the lead in the play, that's a lot of time. You have to take the SAT and the ACT. You're taking a big bunch of AP classes. And the most important thing that you do in 11th grade is get good grades. So if you're only then starting to run around and panic about, what do I have to do for college? And everybody's doing this, it creates a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
So what I like to tell people, if you think about your high school career, 12th grade is a non-issue. Right. By the time you get to 12th grade, everything's early action, early decision. Everything's out within the first month or two. So let's just dismiss a quarter of your high school career. Irrelevant. Now, obviously, you need to keep up in school. You can't commit a felony, but for our purposes, it's a non-issue. So now we have 3 years in high school.
Right.
And as I said, by the time 11th grade comes, I call 11th grade the blur year. Like, you're just going to be grinding. You're going to be grinding so much that it's not even going to come to your attention as to what's going on. So when you think about those 3 years, freshman, sophomore, junior, I call it 70% of your body of work, of what you've done that's going to go on that application, is already done by the time you get to 11th grade.
Right.
Because two out of the 3 years of grades are already done. That's a lot. That's 67%. You're not putting your 12th grade grades on your college application because you haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
So you basically have 3 years to create your body of work. Don't ignore 2 of the 3 years. How is that going to help out? You can't build an entire body of work in 11th grade when everything's crashing down on you.
I love it. So, that is so true. My daughter's in college now and has gone through, some very high level applications and waitlisted at Princeton and UPenn and she's a rock star. I mean, she would have been a great Naval Academy midshipman. But and we look back at her resume, and it was really flawless. Best scores, great grades, about not quite valedictorian, is some I don't know, 4.5.
Right.
It was ridiculous. I mean, she never made a B in high school, but they grade things differently. I think the reason why she didn't get valedictorian is because she took an art class, that wasn't a elevated, graded. Grade. So all these little things now that make a big difference in how your resume looks. But the one thing she was a ballerina for 15 years, and the one but the one thing that she didn't really have was a high school sport. Mm-hmm. Which is almost like a check in the box. You gotta do something, and she did the plays, she did, leadership courses and clubs and, all of those things, but she didn't have a sport. And that now we're just, hindsight 2020 type of thing, saying, well, maybe if we had a sport, it might have been better for her. But she loves where she is now. She's an honors program at University of Maryland, which, by the way, is a really tough program to get into. State colleges now are very competitive. I mean, we have kids that are, rock star, straight A's in high school aren't getting into state colleges. So
Absolutely.
you have to really start early, and you have to really start taking it seriously, if that's your goal, right?
Sure.
To do that. So I love that, and I love the idea about trying to kind of build your resume, build that foundation freshman, sophomore year, because you're peaking. Basically, you're trying to peak that junior year.
Correct.
And you can use 12th grade as almost like a taper year.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
If you think about it. And
Right.
now, especially with athletics, I mean, some of these kids are knowing they're going to a college, 10th grade.
Sure. Yeah.
10th, 11th grade. I said, what are you thinking about? So it's crazy how advanced things have gotten for the process. And, for the athlete side, you have to be really, really good athlete to be able to want to get collegiate athlete. And you'll know by freshman, sophomore year if you're going to be in that realm. If not, you may have to find, still play sports. They're great for you, and they're an awesome way to build character and team spirit and all those things that you need. But at the same time, you have to focus more on your grades, maybe, or focus more on your SATs. All these things. If that's
Sure.
the next level of education is part of your process. So yeah, I love that junior year thing. That I'm sorry I digressed a little bit from where you were going, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And then I'd be honest with you, I'm gonna make my son watch this video. And then we're going to talk about the Prepwell Academy, because it takes a village. I'll be honest with you, it really does take a village.
For sure.
And it does help to have people who have kind of been there, done that, and have streamlined the process and made the education of getting to higher education, an easier road, because
Sure.
it's very difficult. Yeah.
And one thing I'll mention, Stu, because I mean, I hear stories all the time of the student, just like your daughter, who has done everything right by all accounts. So what I do is I try not to pin hopes and dreams and identity by where you get into college, because I don't want to say it's irrelevant, because you have to move in a direction, you have to have a goal, you have to have an aspiration. But these days it's so difficult to figure out what the mix is, that my goal is to prepare them so well that it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they get into this school or that school. And I hate to use the word irrelevant because it sounds like it's callous, but my goal would be, and I did this, which is the night before the schools send their yes or no's out, we all take a pledge. We all go online and we sign up for the pledge that says, I raise my right hand and I say that no matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what I get, yes, no, deferred, whatever it is, I've done my best. This does not define me. Just because I don't get into my top choice school does not mean I failed. And there's a whole long list of things. And you say, I pledge that what the decision in that envelope does not define me. If I get what I want, great. If not, I will dust myself off and I will be just as good, because I've prepared. I've done everything I could. And the rest of it is up, not necessarily to fate, but that's why, because people get really stressed out the day before those letters come in, or not letters anymore, but online. And I want them to take a deep breath the night before, because it's very frenzied, as you know. Sure. And, people are texting each other. Did you get in? I got in. Did you get in? So let's have one community come together and all acknowledge that this has been a long and tough road. I'm not defined by what happens tomorrow, so that you're prepared for because it's probably going to be a no, in all honesty, for those big brand name schools, unless you have some little angle, which we could talk about. It's likely going to be no. Set the expectations, but no does not mean that you did the wrong things. You should have done that. You should have done this. And that's why I like starting in ninth grade, because it gives people the confidence that they're tracking, and then they just leave it up to whatever happens, as opposed to kids scrambling in 11th grade. Oh, I wonder what if I had done this? What if I had started earlier? Prepwell Academy eliminates that and says, if you're tracking and you're doing the tasks and listening and absorbing every week and being diligent, you're good to go.
Nice. I love it. That's such a great methodology to preparing people for, future everything. I mean, this is the way you tackle projects. right? And you have done many projects. Obviously, you've I listed a long list of
Right.
like, this is what I want to do. How do I do it? Now let's go do it, right? And your foundation. And I'm sure at the end of high school, you could have had multiple options, to go to school, because you were, even if Yale's numbers were too short, right? And that happens,
Sure.
sometimes it's just a numbers game. You're fully qualified to be able to get into some of these
Absolutely.
schools. You're fully qualified to get into these schools. There are just not enough seats in the classroom.
Right.
Right. And that just happens. So yeah, you can't let yourself to be defined by that. Absolutely. I love that. I love
And by the way, Stu, you tell me, because you're in the mix with this a lot more. How about raising your hand the day before Bud starts and say, "Hey, I've done all Stu's workouts. I prepared the best I can. I've recovered. I've mentally prepared. I've done this scuba diving, and I've done this, and I've gotten all these quals. I'm starting on day one. I could break my leg tomorrow. That doesn't mean I'm a failure."
Right.
So, I mean, it's the same thing as you said. This mentality of prep the best you can, because some people are lucky. Some
Yes.
people are gray man. They just slide through. Other people are unlucky. So
Yeah.
it's all about doing the best that you can do, and then feeling good and not feeling disappointed.
I love that. In fact, we came up with a podcast a while back ago about, quitting buds, not making it through and quitting buds. And we said the exact same thing. You can't let that define you, because, I was telling a story of, one of my, another officer classmate that didn't make it through buds. I think he screwed up something on drown proofing, or had an injured shoulder and combo. Anyway, it hurt to, anyway, long story, many different reasons why people don't make it through buds. But I was looking at the Admiral list the other day, and sure enough, made Admiral,
Right.
got his 1-star Admiral in a different community in the Navy.
Nice.
Still friends with him on Facebook, and he got a beautiful family. I mean, he did not let that define him, and he went on to, do really great things. And that's the goal. I think, with proper preparation, right, what you're able to do now is build a foundation of success, that if you get a bump in the road, a no, right, or a fail, you have the ability to just move on to the next turn in the road that's going to take you into, a different level of success.
Sure.
So,
and as you know, Stu, these days, as being a freelancer yourself and part of the gig economy, these days you're not going to IBM and shutting it down for 30 years. I mean, in the military, that's one track that could last 20, 25, 30 years. You can make a quote career out of it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of pensions anymore. A lot of these companies coming around, people are bouncing around 2 years here, a year there, a startup goes under, they start somewhere else. So this idea of reinventing is, for this group of kids, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, that's going to be their lives. They're likely not going to shut it down unless they're in a government job, and there are still things out there. But if you're going to mix it up in the private sector, you better be able to bob and weave and be resilient and look for new opportunities and be prepared for the company to get fired, not out of your control, the company to get taken over and your department goes away. And that's just time for you to take all those same principles, I call them the 7 repeatable skills, and just deploy them again.
Man, I love it. Yeah. I mean, you have to be, if you're right. If you're actually on the, with anything really, you really have to be able to evolve, because technology moves at the speed of light, literally and figuratively, basically. Right. But it's, things that, this podcast that we are doing right now, we could not have done 2 years ago.
Sure.
Not this easily. I mean, we could have figured out Skype and
right.
Done all this stuff and, have recordings and, it'd been a pain in the neck. I can do this same podcast on my phone, from inside my car and while my kids are playing soccer or something, so it's amazing what we can do now. And, being able to evolve with times and bob and weave with what comes and goes is a great life lesson and a life skill. And I would say 100%, absolutely. I probably learned that best in high school. So your Prepwell Academy is really an ideal time to learn, your market for the Prepwell Academy is an ideal age to learn all these skills, because you're not going to learn it playing video games all day.
Right.
That's just the way
Yeah.
it works.
And as I reflected, I mean, I've made some wild changes from college to the private sector banking world to special operations, special warfare, back to an educational environment, to an entrepreneurial environment, to a civic worker as a firefighter, to a parent. I mean, these are not just going from startup A to startup B. This is like drastic 180-degree swings. So that's why I'm confident in the information that I'm putting out, because to be able to go to make those swings, most people don't go with those crazy swings. Maybe I'm just an oddball, but most people are making small course corrections, which makes the process a little bit easier. But if you have to make those big course corrections, I want you to have the skills to be able to feel confident that you're not locked in because you feel like you're a technologist and you really want to be an artist, but all you know is technology and that's where your skill set is, and you just keep doing it over and over again. I want you to have the freedom to say, this is not working out. I'm not living my best life. I'm confident enough to shut that down and start something else up because I learned how to do it in high school and now I'm just going to redo it now.
Right. I love it. Yeah, it really is. It really is amazing how many of the life skills that you can, if you can learn them early. Like I look back in hindsight and I just kind of muscled through it. You know,
Right.
I had a goal and I just muscled through it, you know, whether it was working out to make a football team or it was studying harder to make better grades, or, you know, my secret for leadership courses in high school was go try out to be the vice president of something.
Right.
I was already doing 3 sports. You know, I was studying my butt off to make good grades. I just didn't have time to be the president of anything. So I was like, I'm going to be vice president.
Right.
No, that was my strategy to get leadership.
Right.
You know, and luckily I got team captain and things like that, you know, which is another good source of leadership experience.
Sure.
And, you know, part of your, you know, college resume. But yeah, that is really, man, you made me reminisce a little bit there. That's nice.
The good old days.
Yeah. So yeah, it is much different world now, and it is that kids need to start on it earlier, just because it's just moving so fast, and especially in the sports world. You know, a lot of
for sure.
You know, young athletes that are not burned out by sophomore year, by playing year after year after year the same sport.
Right.
You know, good on you. You must love
Right.
it. You know, if you love it, go after it, you know, and do it. But, you know,
And the other thing, Stu, it should not be stressful. When stress comes when you're not prepared.
Yes.
Stress doesn't come when you start early enough and you're getting the breadcrumbs, the little tiny bits leading you along the way. And everybody's going to capture different things at different times. So there's a decent amount of repetition because a lot of these principles are tried and true. But when you're a graduating 8th grader versus a graduating 10th grader, the message is going to hit you differently because you have a more life experience. You listen to kids in the locker room. All of a sudden the pieces start coming together. But if you don't have those pieces at least floating around, and some kids are really mature. I have people who are graduating 8th grade who are blow me away at their diligence and their maturity. And there are other kids who, wow, they have a slower burn, but eventually if you're exposing them to this type of stuff, it does not have to be, you know, I don't want kids to think, I got to start in 11th and 9th grade, like another thing on my list. It doesn't have to, it's not like you're going to study for the SAT in 9th grade.
Right.
You're just understanding what's coming ahead. Hopefully it's giving you some insight into decision making. If you're kind of thinking about this or this, and then a timely video comes in and says, hey, you might want to consider positioning yourself in this so that you can get a leadership position later on. Those are the small little tidbits, like old Uncle Phil tapping you on the shoulder and just whispering in your ear every Sunday night that, hey, think about this. Now the question is, do you hear it and execute it? That's when you get ultimate success.
Sure.
Some people hear it and don't do anything, and unfortunately some kids don't ever get that mentorship. Yeah. That's a tougher bridge to cross. Yeah. But so there's 3 levels. There's the people who don't hear any of this advice. There's the people who get it and aren't mature enough to execute it. And then there's the fast trackers who get it and actually apply it.
Gotcha. Yeah. You know what? That's everything in life too. You know, like I said, I write fitness books for a living. You know, it's a great book. You know, it's doing nothing sitting right here on my desk.
It's not going to work out itself.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you got to do it. I love that, Phil. So, you know, I wanted to have you on, the Tactical Fitness Report. This is a little bit beyond kind of tactical fitness, but it is so intertwined with, the same facets that we discuss all the time with preparation and, getting out and doing it, and just having the guts to go do it. Your methodology at Prepwell Academy, I love to see it. And you talk the talk. I mean, you have been there, done that. You have made continuously throughout your life, made changes that are disruptive changes. I mean,
Yes.
they are disruptive changes that take you to another level of success. And, that's what it really takes. It takes, taking yourself seriously when you're a student, taking yourself seriously and saying, you know what? You're right. I don't have to be stressed out about my future. I don't have to know what I want to do at 14 years old. But
Right.
if I follow this little system of learning how to start preparing and all the little flags that pop up throughout each month of your, high school career, if you're ahead of the ball game, it's going to make the life so much easier for you. So
Sure.
I love it. Where can we find out more about Prepwell Academy?
Yeah, the best place is prepwellacademy.com.
Okay.
And love to have you on Facebook and Instagram. Those are places that I do some of my social media stuff. And email me, check out our blog. We just recently posted a blog about why consider the service academies. So if that's something of interest to you, go to the blog as well, and would love to connect.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask, whoever's watching this, make your parents watch it, or if your parents, make your kids watch it and see if you like Phil. see if you like Phil. I mean, Phil's a nice guy. I mean, he's such a nice guy that is constantly serving others, throughout his life. He's prepared himself to, be of service, whether it was military service. Now he's serving his community as a firefighter. And, in his part-time, he's created this great system of being able to serve even more, with the Prepwell Academy. So thank you for a continued, journey of service, to all, making us all better, and
Well, thank you, Stu.
yeah, like I said, if we can all, come away with a couple of those accomplishments that you have done in life, that's going to be a pretty successful life. So I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, Stu. I wish everybody the best of luck.
All right. Thank you. So don't forget Prepwell Academy, and show this to your kids if you're listening. I'm going to share this on my Facebook page, on my Instagram. I'll put it on my newsletter, and, it's going to be on YouTube here right now. And we're on iTunes and GooglePlay. So we'll get it out there, Phil. Hopefully it'll get more people your way and learning the methodology of prepping well.
Great. Well, thank you. And I'll be down at the Naval Academy on a visit sometime in the beginning of August. So maybe we can connect in person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I still coach there, and I'll show you our facilities and love to walk you around. That'd be awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Stu.